I couldn't be any more excited right now.
Those hands were filled with poop-stained underwear, which he allegedly smeared on the face of his victim.
Do you realize what percentage of your opening conversations are about bathrooms, Merrill?
Sometimes when you look through the little hole between the stalls, you can see another guy. You should just look him in the eyes the entire time.
I think you have the wrong expectations for what's going to go down here. We're going off the rails here. Maybe football instead.
As always, next year. Happy Dictionary Day, and welcome to Week 7 of the Sandlot Cast, everybody. The podcast about our uber-competitive fantasy football league, so you don't have to. This week we got a sub-host with us here. We'll start with Anthony, though, who's here every week. What's going on, man?
How's it going, Mike? You know, you say it's Dictionary Day. I bet you Hillers was really hoping it was Thesaurus Day, given some of his previous emails where he basically thumbed through that thing like a gangsta, picking out all sorts of words. He was so close.
Yeah, that 1920s email or whatever he sent out, I think. Yeah, that was fisticuffs Hillers there.
So what I'll say about that email, by the way, is some of us are kind of trying to get that $35 award for the best contribution of the league. I think that probably Hiller should have to pay an additional $35 for that email because it was not great.
He should just fund that to whoever wins it.
Yes, exactly.
Well, since Hillers isn't here, he's a little under the weather, or he's celebrating Dictionary Day. We're not real sure. I think he's kind of a little lost with this whole furlough thing. The days are all blending together. He doesn't know what's going on. But we've got Nick here hosting for the first time this year. What's going on, Nick?
All right, so I have the Wiener's at 12.
No, not yet. No. That's later.
Oh, okay. I haven't done this in a while. I'm really like thrown off on what I need to be doing right now.
Well, I think you were spot on because the Wiener's is clearly a number 12 team here.
Except it's Wiener, the S is silent.
Later, right?
So
the Wiener's?
Wiener. It's singular. But so a couple of personal business here. Happy birthday to Brett, whose birthday was yesterday, I believe. So happy birthday to him. And the Sandlot Cast family has grown one bigger, as Mr. Brad Watson had a daughter last night.
Wow, congrats, Brad.
Congrats to Brad. Mom and baby are doing great. Aubrey Marie Watson will be her name.
Wow.
And, born around 10 o'clock last night. So congrats to Brad and Emily, and potentially a future owner in the Sandlot Fantasy Football League. So, although not the true heir of the Assassins, that would be his firstborn, Luke. So we'll have to see.
I look forward to the day of having another Watson in the league so that there's yet another doormat that we can just steal wins from.
Oh, well, we'll get to that because he's no doormat this year. But
hey, and don't sell yourself short. I know it was your birthday last week. You kind of slid that through. So
it was.
Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. And I don't know when anybody else's birthday are in the league, so if we missed it, happy birthday to you guys. But anyway, this week we've got our first ever mid-season awards that we're going to do here on the podcast. At least I think it's our first ever. But we're going to start with our typical team overviews. We'll try to breeze through that pretty quick. We don't have Hillers here, so the rambling should be at a minimum. And I think everybody's sober. But
not by the end of this podcast.
We'll run through those. Then we'll do our power rankings, followed by predictions for our divisional doubleheader, which we have coming up. And we'll finish up with the mid-season awards, which should make for some good conversation to see how things go. So we just kind of made up the awards. So next year if you have better awards, then let us know, and we'll probably won't do them.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
That said, let's get into divisional overview here, boys. We're going to start where we normally do with the highest scoring team and their division. And this week that was one Mr. Anthony here, who put up 143 points as his end zone bombardment squad beats the Choop 143 to 74.8. Goes to 6-2 and in first place by one game in the division. So Nick, you haven't really weighed in on Anthony's team yet.
True.
And we're going to let our guest go first here. Any thoughts on Anthony's team? And I'm not really buying this team. I don't know why. I can't buy into it. But are you buying this team?
I think it's a solid team, and that's all I have to say. No.
Okay, concise. I like it. Less is more.
You wanted to move on.
Yeah.
He 31 points out of Stafford you can't really expect every week. He got 28 points out of his kicker and his defense, which you can't really count on every week, I guess. I mean, it seems a little bit high, but the way defenses are scoring this year, I don't know. Keenan Allen at 16. I mean, every wide receiver has their big week. And Marshawn Lynch, Giovanni. I mean, these are guys that can put up those big games, and they all just happen to put up a big game. So,
yeah, I mean, it did come through. His kicker and defense have been scoring a lot, but as Anthony said before the podcast, he spent $3 on the 49ers in the draft, so he was believing in them, and they're working out now. I'll debate that the defense is about the most unpredictable position, second most anyway, next to kickers. So the top defenses don't always finish in the top, but 49ers turning out to be a good defense, and he paid for them, and it's working out here. Emmanuel Sanders and Keenan Allen, I mean, unbelievable that
going back to that point, that Emmanuel Sanders, not like he's done anything all year long anyway. So that's what I'm saying is that receivers are going to hit sometimes.
Yeah.
And Emmanuel Sanders just happened to hit after he's been on my team for 5 weeks. He decides to finally blow up when I drop him, but I'm not bitter.
Well, Anthony, you traded for Kobe Fleener, big blockbuster deal here last week, and decided to bench Kyle Rudolph again. Not that it really made a difference, but what were you thinking when you made the trade?
Well, so I definitely needed a tight end. I mean, I lost Owen Daniels. I needed someone to plug in, and I lost the bid for Garrett Graham, and I got Rudolph for $1. Now, up until that point, Rudolph hadn't done anything under Christian Ponder. So I kind of needed a little bit more of a solid pickup. Kobe Fleener was getting dangled out there by Hillers, and, Dobson was probably the first to go on my team. So why not just make the trade and go for it?
Nick, what does dangling look like? Thank you. Okay.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's what I was going to go with. Yeah.
Hey, I'd like to chime in, though, on a couple of things that both you and Nick said, if that's all right.
Quickly.
So you talk about a kicker, who cares about a kicker? I'll pay $2 for a kicker when it's on a team that's going to score a lot of points. You know why people don't own Josh Brown? Because the Giants don't put up points. You know why 100% of people own Stephen Gostkowski? Because the Pats put up points every week. That's why you pay for a kicker. You pay for a kicker that puts up points. And look at it top to bottom. The kickers at the bottom, look at the top to bottom points for. The kickers at the bottom are on bad teams. The kickers at the top are on good teams. That's how it goes. You got to pay $2 for a good one. But if you want to continue paying $1 for a kicker, that's fine.
We're not arguing that kickers aren't good, Anthony. We're just saying that to get 28 points combined out of your kicker and defense is a good week.
It is.
I don't know. I mean, Alex Henry he's the number 7 kicker. He's on Philly. Hauschka's on Seattle. They're not a real high-scoring team. Justin Tucker's on Baltimore. He's a top 10 kicker. He's the number 9 kicker is a free agent right now. Dan Carpenter has been a high-scoring kicker. He's a free agent right now. I mean, you can say high-scoring teams have better kickers, but there's no real statistical evidence to show that.
Janikowski is one of the better. Has been historically one of the best kickers in the league in fantasy because he kicks from 50 yards out.
Okay, that's fine. You guys don't have to believe me. So then the second thing I want to say is Emmanuel Sanders. That was a carefully selected and started flex player this week due to Cromartie being on Antonio Brown, and I figured this is the game where the Steelers have got to throw to keep up with the Jets, and Emmanuel Sanders was likely to be the recipient of a bunch of targets. Now in this case, all he did was
the Jets. The Jets like a high-scoring offense.
Compared to the Steelers, they are.
Okay.
So I didn't think that Sanders would get that one bomb touchdown. I'm glad he did, but I definitely thought he would get targeted.
Well, he did get a whole whopping 3 catches. So I mean, he was crushing it with those. It's yeah.
Well, it's not like I just pulled a random ass dude out of the waiver wire bin and
started the best guy that you had. That's what you did, and he hit. Just admit it. It was just luck of the draw. 3 catches.
It's not a bad start. Emmanuel Sanders is a startable guy at times, and it just panned out. Anybody's got to get lucky with anyone they start if they're going to score points. So, whatever. It's the guy's worked out for you. I guess that's all I'm really saying. I mean, it's it could go either way. Like you said, you had a strategy in picking the guy, and who are we to argue because it worked out? So, all right. The Choop on the other side of this. Actually, let's go to the next team in the division because I don't want to get out of order here on my sheet. But that would be the Black Widows, new team name again here. Loses to Dave's team, 95.2 to 103.3. Falls to 1-7, last place in the division by 5 games. And Nick, or Anthony, we'll start with you here, I guess. If I told you that a team was coming into this game and only had one game where they scored below 88 points, and they were playing against a team that had scored 3 out of the 6 weeks under 75 points, who would you say should be the favorite in that game?
The first one.
Yeah, well, that turns out not to be the case. But anyway, anything more that can be said about my team here?
Well, I mean, obviously you suffer from some kind of curse or voodoo hex, but this was a couple of reasons of extreme bad luck. Here's a couple examples of extreme bad luck for you this week. You had to play against Vernon Davis, who put up 30 points, which is unbelievable for any player, let alone
29 in the first half.
Let alone a tight end. And given that you lost by only 8 points, man, playing Vernon Davis this week was the kiss of death. Second, you probably, from all your flex players, you sat Larry Fitzgerald, who went nuts this week, and instead you played Dwayne Bowe.
Let me answer that though. Fitzgerald was playing in the 4 o'clock game, and there was talk early Sunday morning that it wasn't looking good that he was going to play. People were saying, Schefter and Mortensen and those guys were all saying he might not play today. We don't know. And so my choices, other than Fitzgerald, were going to be either Miles Austin, who had his own hamstring issues, or Dwayne Bowe, who was healthy and definitely going to play. The problem was Bowe was playing at 1 o'clock in the early game. So I started Bowe because I knew he was going to play. And I didn't want to be stuck with having to choose between Fitzgerald and Austin, especially if Fitzgerald didn't play, then I'm stuck starting Miles Austin.
Gotcha.
So just kind of a crappy situation.
So in addition, you had the worst game out of the year from Antonio Gates, and James Jones got hurt in the first quarter. So a lot of bad luck on your side.
Nick, what can I do, man?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's the same thing week in and week out. I mean, it's you made your case for sitting Larry Fitzgerald, and I get it. And I mean, for someone that's gimpy, I mean, he did get 13 of his 16 points came on one play. So I mean,
yeah, it's a weird play
it's
too.
It's not like he crushed the team. Like he just happened to get enough out of his hamstring to run for 75 yards. Like
yeah, and he hurt his other hamstring in the process. Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. Like I mean, you're not going to take away that point, but yeah, I mean, you justified it in making the right play.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of the same thing every week. I mean, my opponents have had people I played. I've only played one opponent who scored below 97 points on the year, and that's the one game I won. And I've lost by 10, 9, 14, 3, and 8. So close games.
I will say this about your team. This is what I'll say. This is what your positive is. It's ridiculously hard to trade with you at this point because you have so much keeper potential already built up that it's hard to kind of improve on what you have right now.
Yeah.
But you know what, Nick? The counterpoint to that is Merrill went into this year with guys like Jamal Charles, Josh Gordon. I mean, he had a pretty solid and Russell Wilson coming in. He had a solid team as keepers, and it still turned out this way.
You would.
So
but looking at his team now of the guys that are doing well, Charles, are you going to trade Charles away?
No. The thing is,
Gordon.
I mean, I agree with your point.
Right now, looking at his roster right now, the way that the guys that he's doing well are doing, he has potential keepers already. These are the guys that you have to beat to be able to upgrade Merrill and to be able to get the top guys from his team.
Right.
Like what can you give to get Fitz off of Merrill, who looks stoned as hell?
Well,
right
I think Merrill's about to lag out. He'll come back. So I mean, so I agree with your point. I mean, Merrill has just a stacked lineup up and down, especially for keepers. There's almost nothing that we can do to upgrade because he has solid players for very cheap. But that's not necessarily a equation for success. I mean, it's the best that you can do to put your team in a position to win. But sometimes it's not enough, as we're seeing with Merrill this year, and as we saw with Merrill last year.
Right.
So.
I think that's the positive right now is that it's, yeah. I mean, it's hard for him to even have a fire sale right now because the things that he has to sell, he like the asking price for even his like, okay, well, I want your most expensive best guy. Well, what am I going to give you to actually be able to help improve your team?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what it's kind of more of the same. These breaks aren't going my way. So anyway, let's move on to the Assassins as our next team here. They lose to the Sex Cannons. They put up kind of a subpar week for the Assassins. They lose 82.8 to 93.5. Pretty close game. They fall to 5-3, but in second place in the division, only by 1 game behind you, Anthony. And Hillers was pretty terrified of this team last week, Nick. And Assassin's kind of a surprise team this year. Coming out of the draft, not a lot of us believed in them. What do you think of this team?
Steven Jackson still being hurt is going to hurt him. He's going to ride the Jacobs team, the Jacobs train for the next few weeks until Andre Brown comes back. Brady's going to be Brady. He has Peterson. His team, I mean, he can keep doing what he's doing, is actually what it comes down to. I think that he is still going to be he's still going to be a threat because his team is still built to be. Somehow this team that we all thought was the worst and that keeps making ridiculous trades and trades away this to get depth, and everyone keeps getting hurt. He keeps somehow managing to put pieces together to not be hurt.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Anthony, I mean, you've been down on Brad. I don't know if there's any more we can say about him, but anything changed this week for him?
Well, I mean, I think that this week shows a weakness for Brad. I mean, he more or less was at full strength despite not including the Steven Jackson injury, which has been going on all season. But this is Brad at full strength and really not putting up a good score at all. So this is maybe one of the first signs of weakness that we've seen out of Brad. And I think that might continue because he doesn't have a lot of free agent money. Bye weeks are going to continue. And maybe Brady just doesn't have a 30-point game in him this year. We haven't seen above 25 yet.
Yeah, so Nick, you're a Patriots guy. I mean, should he be worried about Brady at all? I mean, what's going on there?
Yeah, I don't think Brady's not going to be worth the price tag that he paid for him. And then that's just the way it is. And the thing Brady's not doing anything special that you can even try to hey, I'll give you Tom Brady for something. His numbers, and even when I think his best games available, he's going to be a game manager is what he's going to be now. He's going to hand the ball off a lot, and it's going to be just relying on the defense. But who knows? Now that the Patriots' defense is falling apart, maybe Brady will start airing out a little bit more. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like every week he puts up these scores, you lose a little value, and maybe, like you're saying, at this point you can't really trade him to a contender. I mean, what's he going to get back? I mean, you're not going to get somebody better than Tom Brady back in a trade, I mean, it's weird. It's kind of a weird situation. Anthony, we both kind of poo-pooed Ruben Randall a little last week, and Hillers was really high on him, and he puts up another score here. So far we look a little silly on that one, but I'm still not buying. I don't know if you are.
No. Oh, okay. So he puts up another score. So he's had two good weeks. Ruben Randall is also the cause for several of those Eli interceptions. So yeah, he had a good game on the stat sheet, but he had a pretty bad game in reality. And if he continues to have those kinds of bad games where he's causing his team to lose, then he's not going to be trusted by his quarterback.
Yeah.
And by the way, he's benefiting by the Giants' lack of a run game. I think when Andre Brown comes back, that'll open up the run game a little bit, and you're going to see targets going to Nix and Cruz, and Randall's going to be the odd man out. Maybe.
That could be. If they're talking about Hakeem Nicks possibly being traded, which could help Randall, but I've heard both sides of that story, so I don't know if he's going anywhere or not. But Assassins kind of cruise on, and the cruise on they lost, but didn't put up a real stinker. But we'll see if he can hold up here. I mean, we all said he might fade down the stretch, so we're halfway through the year, and we'll see if he can continue through the second half. Final team in the division is the Dad Dicks. They lose to TDJ 73.5 to 94.5, fall to 4-4 to third place and 2 games back. But I think the big story here is Jimmy Graham, Anthony. He went down with an injury. Is this kind of what we were saying, how this is a boomer bust team based on Breeze and Graham?
So I'm not worried about the Jimmy Graham injury per se. I mean, I think he's just going to come back and play after his bye week. I'm not worried about the injury, but yes, it is a boomer bust team based on those two. And clearly when they don't perform, I mean, Jimmy Graham's the number 1 receiver in the league for yardage.
And he's a tight end, yeah.
And he's a tight end. So like when that doesn't happen, you see the weakness in this team. But also I'll say that Dad Dicks did not have any other touchdowns on his team really, and most of his guys had exceptionally bad performances. So I don't see the bust being at 73 points all the time. I do see Chris Johnson's getting more yards, not necessarily scoring, but getting more yardage. I see Woodhead getting a touchdown here and there, and I see Decker getting more than 50 yards. So maybe the bust for Dad Dix might be a high 80s.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
I'm not necessarily worried about the team. It's just, this was a bad week for him.
So, Nick, I remember a couple of years ago you wrote this, or you made this point, I can't remember if it was over IM, or you wrote a message about Chris Johnson and how if you take away his big plays, he's not that good. And we all kind of jumped on you and said, well, you can't just take away a guy's big plays. That's ridiculous. And well, Chris Johnson looks like a pretty average running back in the NFL now. I mean, we made
Chris
rules.
Johnson is taking away his big plays for himself. Chris Johnson doesn't even get the big plays now. Like, I don't got to take them away.
Yeah. So you look at his running back. I mean, Danny Woodhead is his numbered. Like, I mean, he's got no real running backs here. I mean, it's just.
Well, he's got McFadden. McFadden's fine when he's healthy.
Is he?
Yeah, he's 80. I'd take 83 yards. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that.
I guess. Nick, I mean, is this a team? Should he be making moves, or is there anything he can do to help improve a little bit?
Here's what's going to kill him.
Spread the risk.
It's all going to come down to what Romo does. Is which Romo shows up this week, because this week is what's going to kill him. This if he has without Jimmy Breeze on his team, right? Without Jimmy Breeze this week, it's going to really hurt this team, and he needs to float. He needs to go 1-1, because I think if he goes 0-2, I think that's pretty much it for the Dad Dicks.
Okay. Yeah, fair enough. Well, this is why he kept Romo. I know when I was talking to him about getting a trade for him, he really was not willing to deal him because he needed him for this week, and I can't really blame him for that. We can't really say much about this team. We've been saying from the start, Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham were the key to this team. They had kind of a bad, a little below average week, and he put up a below average score. I mean, that's how it goes every week for this team. So, it's kind of same old Dad Dicks. We'll have to see how we think things are going to go in Week 7 here when we get to predictions. Let's jump into the Melon Ballers division. They're our next division here, and we'll start with the highest scorer of that division, which is another podcaster here, the Light Sabertooth Tigers, who beat the Weenyay 120.5 to 68.4. Nothing like ending a 2-game losing streak. Nothing that you need more than playing the Weenyay.
That's right.
And they go to 4-4 to second place in the division, only 1 game back. So, Anthony, Nick's.
Looks like he's dropping out again. So I'll continue on there. Nick, I think your team is pretty solid right now. I kind of believe Kaepernick has had his ups and downs, but he's going to be fine. Even if he puts up a high 18, 18, 19, 20 kind of points, I think the rest of your guys on your team are going to be fine. Especially if Stephen Ridley starts coming back strong and really takes control of that starting job. So, I like the team. Cobb, losing Cobb is bad, but it's not the end of the world for you. You have Tompkins who you could plug in there, and you have enough running back depth to cover it. So, keep kind of plugging away here, and I think that you might be able to get lucky with a wild card spot.
Yeah, so sorry about jumping out there, guys. Something's going on with my Google Plus, so just power through. If I connect and reconnect, I don't know what's going on here. So, but yeah, thanks for picking up on Nick's team there. Yeah, Nick, on your team here, I didn't realize. I mean, I've been jumping you around a little bit, but I looked at your scores, and you've had 1 week under 89 points this whole year, and in 4 of the 6 weeks we've had, you've been over 100. So you've been putting up some good scores. I mean, I feel like the last 2 weeks weren't so great. But I know you were a little concerned about A.J. Green. This week's got to make you feel a little better about that, right?
Well, I mean, I at no point, I was ready to shop. I'm ready to shop A.J. Green around for the right price now, just because I realized that I might need to do more with my roster now, and I think Green or Cobb are my best pieces to be able to do that right now. But yeah, I mean, I think at no point was ever worried about A.J. Green's production, because he was falling into that receivers are due, and no matter how good your receiver is, they still rely on the quarterback to get them the ball. And Dalton, as we've learned, is not going to have that stellar bounce awesome year, whatever you want to call it, to be able to justify A.J. Green having a beast year.
Right. So, well, hey, remember when you used to have good receivers?
I do. I actually I saw Randall Cobb, and I was like, oh, they were for a minute. I thought, that's fine. I can just plug in Westfield. No, I can't. I have Eric. No. Sid. No. Man, and then I looked at my roster, and I have Kimbrel Tompkins on my bench. That is what I have right now. I need to move some people around. So if you guys need some running back help, let's talk about
Yeah, I mean you're kind of it's weird because you're pretty deep at running back, and you've got Kenrell Tompkins as your wide receiver 2 right now.
Yeah,
So
it's, which
Well, you
isn't
got you
bad,
got something in
it's
your
just-
inbox there, Nick.
What?
You got something in your inbox there.
Yeah, I know.
is it Jaquiz Rogers?
It is.
I'm
Hot
just
hot
kidding.
shot.
Hey, Merrill, what do you think about Kaepernick?
I think. I mean, I'm shocked. I thought he was going to be potentially a top 5 quarterback this year. I really did. I mean, he was somebody who I thought was a steal in the draft, and I think what's happening is he's just not running like he did last year, and that's really where a lot of his points came in. I feel like. So I think that's hurting his scores. He's serviceable. He's fine. I mean, he's probably going to finish top 10, top 12 by the end of the year, just kind of by attrition. But I don't know. I mean, he's not. He didn't take that next step. I think that a lot of people thought he would.
Do you think the Niners are going to change their game plan second half? Once teams have adjusted to the way Cap plays now, do you think the Niners are going to change it to go more to that pistol formation, down the playoff stretch?
I think Nick's got to hope they will, because
I think the biggest problem with Kaepernick is that they have two play. I don't know who else they throw the ball to. It's Bolden and Davis, and that's it.
yeah. Can you name the third guy?
I honestly can't. I have no idea who
can't.
else they throw the ball to there.
Yeah.
So I think that's the thing is that Manningham's supposed to be back in a couple of weeks, so that'll. I mean, when your hopes on Mario Manningham coming back to throw the ball to, I mean that shows how bad.
Well, that
your
and
receiver is.
and Bolden. I mean, as good as he is, he's not really a guy who's going to get a lot of separation as a
No,
receiver.
he's not the guy. He was supposed to He's the guy, the possession guy, to help with the underneath coverages, to help create up Crabtree. I think the injuries have really hurt the 49ers, and that's the problem with Kaepernick this year, is that he doesn't. He literally, like, people can say that Brady doesn't have targets to throw to. He really has nobody to throw the ball to.
Well, he lost Randy Moss, Mario Manningham, and Michael Crabtree. I mean, not that Moss was great or anything, but he was at least a threat.
Right.
So yeah, maybe Kaepernick bounces back, Anthony. I mean, maybe they do switch it up. That's possible.
And I have Vic on my bench, so
Yep.
when he gets healthy,
Vic
He'll
on
get
the
hurt
bench. All right, peanut butter jelly time. Next team here, they beat Hiller's Epidemic, 108.8 to 99.2. Get up to 3-5. They are in last place in the division, but they're only 3 games back. So Anthony Brett put out a couple of stinkers here. Does this week give you any kind of encouragement, at least, that maybe they're not as bad as they were looking?
Well, I mean, 108 points is pretty good, but then you look at sort of the general scores from the players on his team that you think would have really scored well. Like Phillip Rivers had one of his worst games of the season, 15 points. That's nothing crazy. Doug Martin, I'll take 91 yards out of a running back, but when it's a guy like Doug Martin and it costs 25% of your salary, you expect more from that. Foster did great. Arian Foster's you got to start him. Hey, Vincent Jackson, that's encouraging.
no, he's not. Arian Foster is not great. Shut your mouth.
Yeah,
right.
notice how Hillers didn't show up the week he played Arian Foster, and Foster put up 200 yards on him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that I'd be happiest if I were Brett is Justin Blackman. And this is a great question. Do we believe that Justin Blackman is all of a sudden that number 1 pick that he was a couple of years ago? I mean, Blackman's a guy that's been on our fantasy teams for a couple of years now. He's either boom or bust, but mostly bust. Then he gets suspended for doing God knows what. And now he's back strong. Do we believe that he's back strong, or after 2 weeks, or do you think he's just going to fall back to earth once he sees a tougher defense?
I mean, I would say I believe it. I mean, mainly because of the targets that he's getting. I mean, he's got 29 targets in his first 2 games back. Just because of volume alone, I think he's going to be valuable, even if they don't score. I mean, you get 20 targets this week. 20 targets. You get 20 targets. I mean, that's a guy you want to start. I mean, he's clearly the focal point of the offense. I think Cecil Shorts is a little banged up too, so that's part of it as well. But I don't know. I'm buying it, Nick.
I think there's still let's see what happens this week. I think it's one more week, and let's see, because the quarterback situation is just a mess in Jacksonville that what's going to happen. I mean, again, this is just another example of things that players that revolve. He's going to revolve. It's going to be that Chad Henne or
Blaine Gabbert.
Gabbert, yeah.
Old Gabbert.
There's no way a receiver can have consistent value when you have when the quarterback situation changes every week.
So it sounds like he's selling. Yeah, I mean the Phillip Rivers thing. Maybe the first 3 weeks of Phillip Rivers, or the first 3 out of 4 weeks of Phillip Rivers were the fluke, and this is like actually him. But it's not like he's got Robert Griffin to fall back on, because Griffin's been an average quarterback this year so far. So I think the reason he won this week, Brett, is his Bucks came through. I mean, Vincent Jackson came through with 23.4, and Doug Martin right there just at about double digits, and so they performed a little better than average, and so he puts up a little better than average score. That's kind of it. So if his Bucks come through, I think this team will continue to succeed. So
Okay.
Next is the Sex Cannons. They beat the Assassins, as we said, 93-82. They get up to 5-3 in first place in the division, up by 1 game. So, Nick, last year you were kind of down on Evan's team. If I remember some of the podcasts, you were looking for reasons to shoot holes in it. What do you think of his team this year?
His team is not nearly as scary as it was before. Now, he put up 93 points and won. Like, great for him. And again, you can't say, oh, well, if you take away this and you take away that. Like, I understand he scored those points, and that's fine. The Chiefs' defense accounted for 1/3 of his points.
Yeah.
I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, we were talking earlier about you pay for your defense, and I get that. But when you pay for your defense, when you're spending your $1, $2, $3.
Well, they were a waiver defense.
Yeah, let alone a waiver defense. You're not expecting to get 30 points out of your player. He scored the defense. That defense scored almost twice as many points as Peyton Manning this week.
Well, but if you look at that defense, they've put up 20, basically 18 or more points every week except one. So maybe this is legit for that defense. I mean, they are ridiculous right now. Maybe it's not to be.
Even if putting up their average like every week, where it's like 20 points, every week, that's still it's 73-5. Or no, take away 10 points, and it's 83.5, and it's like 0.7 points separating the two. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm just saying that this is a week where had Watson's team just done a little bit more, he could have beat the Sex Cannons, and he could have beat Evan.
Or if he would have started Jacobs.
Yeah, I mean, and Evan's team is great, especially that trade that he made last week with Dave, which we'll get into later. I mean, I'm not shitting on Evan, and this is one thing we can say about his team now, is it doesn't matter what he does because he has Peyton effing Manning on his team.
Right. Well, yeah, so Anthony, I mean, you've been saying that pretty much the whole time. I mean, as long as he's got Peyton Manning, it's legit. I mean, can we say that about the Chiefs' defense now, too?
No. I mean, yeah, the Chiefs have done great, but they have a tougher schedule down the stretch because they played Denver twice in Week 11 and Week 13. And by the way, Evan's got another. I think he's got another defense on his bench. Actually, no, he doesn't. But those are going to be tough games for the Chiefs. And if the Chiefs lock up the division, pretty early, they're going to start resting some players. So.
Well, but Denver's in their division, so
they don't rest their defense.
Well, they rest their defensive players.
That defense is a combination of all 22 players playing on the field at any given time doing that. It's not their starters on the field all the time doing that.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Yeah. It's the scheme. It's the scheme that does it.
Well, and that's fine. I mean, they may rest some. They may rest some of their studs. If they're a little beat up. Tom Ollie, those guys. They might, but they're not going to run away with that division because Denver's in that division. So
that's true. I did forget about that.
So I mean, that's probably not going to happen. The Demaryius Thomas trade was a great move by Evan. I think he got the better end of that deal. I understand why Dave did it because it gives him a quarterback, but Evan pretty much gave up nothing and got a wide receiver 1 out of it. So, good deal by them. No touchdowns. I think the problem Evan's going to have is he doesn't know what running backs to start. I mean, do you start Spiller or do you start Fred Jackson? Do you start Ray Rice? Do you start Bernard Pierce? And I mean, Anthony, are you concerned about Ray Rice at all? He looks bad.
I've been concerned about him since probably the middle of last season because they take carries away from him, and he does not look as explosive as he once did. I mean, in fact, Bernard Pierce looks more explosive. You take, if it's one or the other. But when you have a team like Evans, no, you're not concerned about starting him because even when he puts up 4.9 points, you still win because you have guys like Peyton, you have guys like the Chiefs defense, Pierre Garçon. I mean, shit, even Jermichael Finley covering for you. So, whatever. I mean, you take what you get out of Ray Rice, and if he doesn't get the touchdown, it's not that big of a deal because you're still likely to win anyway.
Yeah. Nick, I mean, I'm concerned about Rice. I don't know if you are or not.
I've never been a Ray Rice believer. I also wasn't a big Julio Jones fan this year. I mean, it's not that I don't like these guys. Like I understand that they're studs and I understand that people like them. Personally, I've just never liked them. So
okay. Yeah,
like,
Rice he's had more than 36 yards rushing in one game this year. Other than that, it's been 36 yards or under in every single game. Not great. I mean, not great. So, but again, Peyton Manning makes up for that. If he's going to put up 55 touchdowns this year, which it looks like he might, and that Chiefs defense keeps playing, their schedule other than those Denver games is pretty favorable. Honestly, I mean, there's not a lot else. So if he can just find a defense to plug in for those, then he should be good. Let's move on to the Choop. Is our final team in this division.
Good.
They get punished by Enzo Bombardment Squad 74.8 to 143. We put the jinx on them last week, I think, by saying they're the most consistent team in the league, and then they come out and score 74 points. They go to 3-5, tied for last in their division, but only 2 games back. Anthony should, is this just because Matt Ryan was out pretty much? I mean, or is this maybe finally showing some weakness on this team?
No, it's not just showing weakness. I mean, it's basically like, ripping an entire tracksuit off your body and showing everything that you got, and it doesn't look all that good. And a lot of bad things happen on this team in the matter of 2 weeks. And let me list them. So, Matt Ryan losing Julio Jones does not look good, especially when the team is already, not doing well. So you're going to find your better wide receivers covered more often. The Falcons are starting to lose at home, which is bad for the Falcons. Matt Ryan might be on the decline for the rest of the season. Trent Richardson, I don't know what's wrong with Trent Richardson. I mean, after losing Ahmad Bradshaw, you think he'd be the primary back, he'd just be running wild. But now Donald Brown actually looks better than Trent Richardson.
Yeah, maybe nothing's wrong with him. Maybe this is just who he is.
Which is very surprising.
He did in Cleveland.
So, and the other thing is Mendenhall is not the guy you want in Arizona. It's definitely Ellington, especially moving forward. So, Mendenhall's on the decline. So
yep.
That, I mean, yeah, he's got a couple tight ends on bye, but, geez, when he was a consistent 100 with all these things happening at once, I think maybe he's now a consistent 90-point team.
Okay.
So when Shoop was my my squeaker real deal team, he's my cusper. I might have to say he's no longer a cusper. He's now on the Nosh Kapil side.
Nick, he's had 948 points against, which is absurdly the most. The second most is at 860, so almost 100 more points have been scored against him. Who's RB1 on this team?
I mean, it's got to be Richardson. But to say this, though, I mean, it's Richardson, it's Maurice Jones-Drew, and to say that his running backs are bad is true, but running backs are just down across the league. So it's like you walked out and you were like, man, I have Trent Richardson, I have traded for Maurice Jones-Drew. This is great. In 2012, this would have been great running back for him. It's just that running back production across the league is down. So you kind of are stuck with what you get, and I think that this is kind of what we're going to. I think that running backs are still going to be the same price that they are, but this is the kind of production we can start expecting from them, though.
Yeah.
Is that you're going to be spending $40 for a guy that you hope gets you 70 yards rushing.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Anthony's been saying. Like 90 yards, I'll take that out of my running back. 85 yards, I'll take that out of my running back. I mean, I feel like a couple of years ago we were saying, well, if he doesn't get 100 yards, he's not, it's not a guy you want to start every week. So yeah, teams just aren't running as much. I will say, bad call by me on Schaub. I thought he'd bounce back, and he still looked terrible. He got hurt, but he didn't look great before that. I mean, he was.
That's because he was hurt.
I thought he would bounce back too, Mike.
Yeah. So,
hey, and what do you say about points against, by the way? I think that JD got really burned with bad luck early in the season. And on the opposite of that spectrum is what happened to Dave this season, which I think we'll get into in a little bit.
Yeah. So the Choop may be a little weaker than we thought, but they could bounce back if maybe it was just missing Matt Ryan. Who knows?
I think with the bad luck so early in the season, it's going to be really hard to bounce back in the division that they're in.
Yeah, and again, we said this last year when you kept saying this, Merrill, is that you can say, oh, well, you have the most points against, you have the most points against, but he also has one of the lowest points for. So
Yeah.
that doesn't points against doesn't matter when you're not putting up enough points to be able to sustain.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it depends on what you mean by enough points. Like this team had been 95 points or more every single week, but of course it was 95 between
You've already
95 and
established
105.
in podcasts all throughout the week, all throughout the year that 100 points isn't enough. If you score 100, that's the bar that
Right.
you need to score 100 to even consider winning.
But that's where we say he's a little unlucky because he's been getting teams that have been scoring a lot more than that against him. Like
But if you're out
if 100 is the average and you're under 500,
average,
then,
you're not going to win games.
yeah, right. But yeah, so I mean I hear you. It's yeah.
Hate to bring math
We'll
into this, but if the average is
Yeah,
100
you and
and
your-
you're scoring
you and your
95, you're not above
Math.
average.
You and your math. Anthony mentioned Dave's team. They're our next team here as we get into the Surly Podcasters division. They beat the Black Widows 103.3 to 95.2. They go to 6-2 on the year, first place in the division, and one game up on Hillers. Nick, this is a team for some reason I still don't believe in this team. What about you?
I don't believe in this team. I think that this is just the epitome of a 500 team again, and regardless of when he wins, it's. Wait, who are we talking about?
Dave.
Dave.
Yeah, that's who I thought. I wanted to make sure that we were talking about them before I started saying.
Right.
Actually, let
Hello?
me get back to me in just a second. I lost the page, and I wanted to.
Anthony.
All right, so Dave, like Nick said, is the epitome of a 500 team. He's just above 500 in the breakdown, but he got very lucky on a couple of things. His two highest scoring weeks have come on doubleheaders, and all of his other scores. I mean, so he lost the two where he did poorly, which is good luck for him. That puts him at 4-2 at the end of week 4. But then he ends up winning week 5 with a score of 74 and change. I mean, now all of a sudden he's 5-2, still with a pretty bad team. But then what Dave did, which was very smart in my opinion, is then he goes and says, I have a shot at winning this. I need a quarterback as that missing piece, and he went out and got him. And now Dave, he legitimately is a scarier team. Although, is it a great leap beyond a 500 team? Not necessarily, but at this point, he doesn't need to be anything more than a 500 team to make the playoffs. I mean, he goes 500 at 6-2 from here on out, and what does that put him at? 10-6 or something like that? Hey, that's playoff time. And once you're in the playoff time, it's just a crapshoot after that.
Right. Nick, have you gathered your thoughts?
I did. Okay, yeah. Okay. I find it extremely funny that he trades for Andrew Luck. I mean, he still wins. So I mean, obviously, what we're arguing is.
Well, he played the Black Widow, so of course he won.
Yeah.
So it's not.
But I mean, even without that trade, he plays the wrong quarterback. He now has 3 quarterbacks on his team, and I really think that the upgrade from. I would rather have Demaryius Thomas and. I'd rather have Demaryius Thomas and Andy Dalton than Andrew Luck. Is what it comes down to, and we can get into that later. But I mean, and especially for this week, like Andy Dalton said, "Hey, fuck you, Dave. I'm gonna put up 30, and Andrew Luck's gonna put up 7, just because."
Yeah.
But aside from that, I mean, he's loaded up on Giants and 49ers, both which offenses aren't exactly the most stellar thing in the world.
He has one Giant. We keep saying he's loaded up on Giants, but he has one, right? I mean, he's got Cruz.
Well, Eli. I mean, yeah, but I guess he's not going to start Eli.
He's not playing Eli. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm with you on the trade, Nick. I mean, I think the move for Luck is more of a long-term move because I think we all think that Luck in a year or two might be Aaron Rodgers. He can move. He's got a big arm. He seems to be really smart. He seems to get the game. So there's a chance that he could turn into a top 5 or elite quarterback in this league. And so
It's not about the long term. It's about consistency to win now. I mean, who is he going to start? He had this quarterback issue between Eli Manning and Andy Dalton all year thus far, and he was losing the battle. You look at Andrew Luck's numbers minus this week, and Luck puts up between 15 and 20 points every week. You can't say the same for Eli or Andy Dalton.
Right. So why does he still have him? I guess is the question.
Why does he still have who?
Dalton and Manning.
Well, I don't know why he has Manning, but Dalton's a legitimate backup.
Yeah. And maybe for bye week, has Luck had his bye week yet? I don't know. No, for bye week 2, I guess. But yeah, you don't need 3 quarterbacks. I mean, if you're going to say Andrew Luck's my guy, we've been over this a bunch of times on the podcast. You got to drop one. Otherwise, you might get caught second guessing yourself and playing that quarterback.
Dave isn't the most active on the waivers. I'm sure once he gets his waiver claim processed, Eli will be the first to go.
But I will say that this is what I will say about Dave's team. I like Bennett. I think Pierre Thomas is someone that he could. No, he's not going to start Eddie Lacy over Frank Gore. I mean, I think that Dave has the pieces on his team to be able to be competitive week in and week out. And while, what we're saying, if he goes 500 for the rest of the year, that puts him at 10-6.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that he has the team to go 500 for the rest of the year, and that puts him at 10-6. Because I think
he's also got the team to go 2-6 the rest of the year, right?
I think he could also have the team to go. Yeah. He doesn't have the team to go 6-2.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a combination.
It all depends on breaks, but yeah, so far, I mean, he's put up some bad weeks. I wish Hillers was here. Also, I mentioned Austin Pettis, who for some reason he's got a man crush on, but he stunk it up.
Because he has Sam Bradford throwing to him.
Eat it, Hillers. Speaking of Hillers, he's our next team here. Hillers Epidemic loses to PBJ 99.2 to 108.8, falls to 5-3, second place in the division, 1 game back. Anthony, Aaron Rodgers. Are we concerned about Aaron Rodgers at all?
No. I'm fine with Rodgers. He hasn't had to do much, well, forget that. I'm not concerned about him. He's probably just having a bit of a lull. He'll be fine. I mean, They're also running the ball a little bit more with Lacy, who's being a successful runner. Therefore, it eats up more clock. Therefore, they don't have to throw as much. So, I mean, it might shave off a couple of points at Rodgers, but don't forget. I mean, Rodgers' first 2 weeks of the season, 29-45. That's the Rodgers that we knew. So I'm not too.
Yeah. For his last 3 weeks, he's been under 20 points, though.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you there. I think that if you had Rodgers, I mean, you're not panicked like you got to trade him, I got to trade him mode. But I think that if the Packers can establish that, hey, you know what, Eddie Lacy is our guy, and we can run, and suddenly the Packers, hey, look, we have a multidimensional attack now. I think Rodgers' points suddenly start dropping significantly, and I think that Rodgers' actual value. His monetary value compared to his point output is going to actually become much more in line with itself.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, volume was definitely a strength because the Packers could not run the ball before. Yeah.
If Aaron Rodgers puts up 25 points a game, which is still a great game for a quarterback, for what his price is in 2-3 years, suddenly not as attractive as what it was before.
Yeah. Fair.
And I mean, the thing is, and if you were to say, hey, and Hillers would kill for 25 points a game from Rodgers right now.
Well, yeah, and let's get into that, Anthony. I mean, who's his wide receiver 2 now and his flex player?
Well, I mean, Hillers definitely is going to have some issues moving forward. This is a bad week to lose DeMarco Murray in this dreaded divisional doubleheader, and it's also a bad week to lose Amendola. I don't know who he puts in at. He can cover RB2 with Bilal Powell, but then who does he put in for his wide receiver 2 and his flex? I mean, I don't know. I really don't know the answer to that question. I mean, maybe
Powell hurt.
I think he's supposed to play.
Good.
So I mean, I think that Hillers is going to have to make some pickups on the waivers in order to be competitive in Week 7.
Joseph Randall coming to Hillers fan. So Nick, what do you think of Hillers' moves so far? At least the trade. I mean, well, I guess specifically the Julius Thomas trade. I mean, that was the big one he made, right?
I think that this was a bad week for Hillers in general because of all the injuries that hit him, and then losing Alfred Morris all to get a tight end, which he's been trying to find that next. He's been wanting that Jimmy Graham, Rob Gronkowski, Aaron Hernandez type of tight end for years now. Yeah. And he thought that he had it in Julius Thomas, and he thought that he had the running back depth to be able to trade. I'll trade away Alfred Morris for Julius Thomas. And I think that then you have a week like this where, hey, you know what? You just got hit by the injury bug hard, and Rodgers isn't going to be able to carry your team as much as he has before. I think that Hiller's team is in a lot of trouble right now.
They could be. I think they'll drop a lot, and drop some at least in our power rankings. Next team we have here, Touchdown Jesus, who comes back a little bit from a dreadful performance last week, 94-73. They beat the Dad Dicks. They go to 4-4 on the year, puts them in third place and 2 games back. So Nick, I'm a believer in this team. Anthony's not a believer in this team. What say you?
I want to really like this team. I think between Cam Newton, Matt Forte and his receiving core, he can pretty much sustain anything.
Oh,
So I think that this team can do it.
oh my God, that's terrible analysis.
Really, between four of his starters are money. Five of his starters are money? His his quarterback, number one running back, and then the wide receivers you can start are money.
I don't disagree about Matt Forte. He's having a hell of a season, and Matt Forte is Mr. Consistency at basically 17 points a game. The problem is that nobody else on his team is.
He has Sam Bradford.
That's true. Sam Bradford he could be great.
He could be great.
But look, I mean, TDJ gets a win out of 94 points. But when you faulted one of these other teams for a guy being when you faulted Evans' team for the Chiefs' defense being 30% of your points on the week, I mean, what percentage of points was Cam Newton for TDJ this week? It's above 30%, I'll tell you that. And Cam Newton is not going to have this kind of weekday, every week. He's not even going to come close to it every week. So this is like an 85-point team. He's lucky to get off with a win, and 500 is probably a little too high for this team as far as a record goes.
He is lucky to get a win here. You keep poo-pooing Cam Newton. I will say he's had his bye week already, and right now he's 21 points away from being a top 5 quarterback, and that's with his bye weeks. So basically, if he had scored an average amount of points and not had his bye week, he'd be a top 5 quarterback right now. So the guy is legit. The numbers show he's legit, whether it's this season, the last season, or the season before that. So you can't depend on 36 points, but yeah, I will say, I mean, he's got Newton, who, top 5, top 7-ish quarterback, right? He's got Matt Forte, who is a top 5 running back right now. He's got 2 top 5 receivers right now, in Calvin Johnson and Dez Bryant. I mean, this team has elite players who can carry him at times.
Is Calvin Johnson really a top 5 receiver right now? No. In the past, he was.
We're not talking. Are you going to say?
Can you tell me there's 5 receivers you'd rather have than Calvin Johnson right now?
No, but he's not a top 5 wide receiver.
That's what we're saying, though, is that it's not about how many points he has right now. It's about who would you rather have. Would you rather have Calvin Johnson or Alshon Jeffrey?
Well,
who would you rather have right now? Right now, if I had Alshon Jeffrey and you had Calvin Johnson,
I'd rather have Calvin Johnson. But the fact is,
then
that's
How about Denarius Moore? How about
Well, what I'm saying is that you can't say
Deshaun
he's
Jackson.
a top 5 wide receiver when he's not performing like one. That's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, the name is good.
Right.
The name Roddy White is good, but
so
he's not
far.
doing anything for Mike.
No, but here's the difference: is that Roddy White and Calvin Johnson are both injured, and Calvin Johnson's been injured. Which, by the way, he practiced this today, so that means that Calvin Johnson should be back to his Calvin Johnson form. Look, Megatron's going to turn into the gun again. And
all I'm saying is that Calvin Johnson is not a positive for this team when the guy's injured.
It's been the last 2 weeks he's been injured, but if he's back going forward, so what matters is going forward, right? He's at 500 right now, so going forward, you have to agree that Calvin Johnson has great potential to be a top 5 receiver, if not the best receiver in the league, right? I mean, he is someone who you could not tell me 5 receivers you would rather have than Calvin Johnson going forward. Can you?
He's probably my number 1. But all I'm saying is that you contribute TDJ's success to a guy like Calvin Johnson, and that's not the case.
Okay, week 2, 23, week 3, 17, week 4, 10. I mean, that's pretty solid.
And for the record, while we're doing that,
forget it. Let's move on. You guys are not going to see. You're not going to see my point here.
Because then, okay.
No, so he's underperformed a little bit.
Dez Bryant, 20, 10, 20, 24, 3.6. I mean, he had down weeks from 2 of his 2 top 5 wide receivers. He had down weeks from. That happens.
Yeah.
You can't count on 30 points every week from Cam Newton, but you sure as hell can't count on 5 points from Dez Bryant and Calvin Johnson combined.
He's a flagship player, Calvin Johnson, right? He's a guy who's on this team. When you think TDJ, you think Calvin Johnson, right? So this is a guy who you don't want to play at all in fantasy because he has the potential to put up 25 to 30 points as a wide receiver. And this is a guy who can carry your team to victories. He's going to win games for you down the stretch. That's all I'm saying. So he has elite players. There's no depth at all in this team. I can't argue that, but which is why he struggled a little bit the last 2 weeks because Calvin Johnson's gone down. But if he's healthy and this team stays healthy, they will make some noise.
You know what? If you look at Ruben Randle's scoring, he looks damn similar to Calvin Johnson.
Great. So I will go ahead and offer you a trade right now, Ruben Randle for Calvin Johnson.
All I'm saying is that Ruben Randle's scores are more or less right now equal to Calvin Johnson's scores. And you guys are telling me that Calvin Johnson...
You're saying that you'd rather have Ruben Randle than Calvin Johnson is what you're saying.
Yeah, we're gonna have to move on because we're not.
I
gonna
don't.
see
I don't understand your point. I guess, Anthony. I mean, you're taking a small sample size of a couple of weeks, and you're saying, well, Ruben Randall's just as good as Calvin Johnson. I mean, is that really what you're doing?
No, it's just that you can't say that TDJ's team has been good because of Calvin Johnson. You can't say that because they have not been good because of Calvin Johnson this season at all.
Okay. What about weeks 2 and 3? I would say that they've been good because of Calvin Johnson.
Okay, so then that's 2 out of 6.
And week 4, he scored 10, and then he was injured 1 week. I mean, you can't say that, but okay. I don't know how you can argue that Calvin Johnson's not a good receiver. I'm missing your
I'm not saying he's
And
not a
again,
good
we're not
receiver. I'm just saying that you can't say that TDJ's team is good because of Calvin Johnson.
By the way, I think our rating viewership just went up by 1 because I think Pritchard has just signed on to watch because how much time we're spending talking to about.
Well,
Yeah.
we're going to have to stop this
All right.
because we were
So-
supposed to keep this quick.
Yeah, Anthony hates Calvin Johnson. We'll move on. Weenye is our final team. We shouldn't spend too much time on these guys, so good. They lose to the Tigers. They fail to break 70 points again here. Only put up 68.4. Fall to 2-6, last place in the division, and 4 games back. So, Anthony, any hope here? They've slowly been increasing over the past few weeks. Is there any hope, any light at the end of the tunnel here for the Weenye?
No, if I were him, don't do anything drastic like trade away some of your core guys, that being McCoy or Djax, and just look on the waivers and try to pick up some meat keepers for next season. I mean, if you wanted to trade away someone like T.Y. Hilton or for a keeper, yeah, go ahead. But I don't think there's any chance for this team.
Right. Nick?
Yeah, no, it's even if Gronkowski comes back and scores 20 points a game, he's still averaging 85 points a game. That's,
Yeah.
Sorry, Andy. That's just the way it is. And
Andy
it
didn't
sucks
do.
that we can spend so much time talking about a team like Pritchard and then come to Andy and be like, yeah, you're bad. We have nothing to say to you. McCoy's good. Deshaun Jackson's good. That's about it.
The thing about Andy is that he didn't do anything wrong this season. It's just
Disagreed.
that none of his dudes panned out. Like
He did trade Matt Stafford for Darrell Richardson.
But none of it, really, how much would that have helped him say this week, for example? He still would have lost.
Well, yeah, this week, yeah.
But
he said he didn't do anything wrong, and that's really the one major move he's made, and so
several of his draft picks, that everybody thought would be fine, did not pan out.
True.
T.Y. Hilton, Tavon Austin, Richardson, and even Gronk, and then also his waiver pickups in Eddie Royal. I mean, none of that stuff panned out, and you really would think that one would, but none of them did.
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, you need some things to break your way, and he's had really nothing other than Deshaun Jackson break his way. McCoy's been good, but McCoy's been McCoy. I mean, that's kind of his deal, right?
Right.
So, yeah,
that's a building block. So
you're right. Okay, let's do our power rankings real quick, guys. We'll start. I'll go ahead and start while you guys get yours ready here. Number 12, I've got the Weenye. Number 11, Feisty Goats. I don't know how I would keep putting myself above the Weenye. 10, I've got Dave, who's 6-2, but I've got him at 10. 9, PBJ. 8, Chupani Brace, and 7, EBS.
I'm number 1 in the breakdown, number 1 in points, and leading.
Okay, well, Anthony, go ahead. Whose power rankings are next? I'm sorry.
It's weird, Anthony. I know. It's just personal thing.
Number 7.
Numbers don't back it up. I know.
I'll take it. So I have Weenye, Masters of Elegance at 12. I have the Goats at 11. At 10, I have TDJ. At 9th, I have Peanut Butter Jelly Time. The Ocho is Chupani Brace taking a bit of a fall. And 7, I have Le Tigre.
Ouch. All right, well, let me read you. Okay, so you're going to love this, Anthony, just because of all the much time we spent spending time, as much time as we spent. Man, that black ale is getting to me. So I have the Weenyes, Masters of Elegance, the Goats. And at 10, I have TDJ. So all I talk about Calvin Johnson and Megatron, I have them at 10. I have Dave at 9, Brett at 8, and Dad Dix at 7.
Ooh.
Okay.
Now, again, to clarify, when I power rankings, people that are based on people that I kind of want to play this week, and I would love to be playing Dad Dix this week. That's why they're number 7, because I would love to catch them without Jimmy Breeze on their team.
Sure. Okay.
Who wouldn't?
I have Dad Dix at 6, so not too far off from you there, Nick. At 5, I've got TDJ. At 4, I've got the Tigers. At 3, I have the Assassins. At 2, I've got Hillers taking a little hit in the rankings, and I've got the Sex Cannons back up at 1 now, just because things just kind of work out for Evan. And Peyton Manning terrifies me.
I think that's a little high on Hiller's team, but anyways.
Might be. It might be.
So 6, I've got the Duplex. 5, I have the Dad Dicks. 4, Hillers. 3, Assassins. 2, EVS, and 1, the Cannons.
Ooh, yours and I are almost very close. I have me at 6, the Tigres at 6, Choop at 5, Hillers at 4, Brad at 3, Sex Cannons at 2. And Anthony, I think that your team right now in the power rankings is the one that scares me the most.
All right. I like it.
So there you go, Anthony. See, does that make you feel better?
Yeah.
Why do you care what I think anyway, really? Clearly, I have no idea what's going on.
You only care what I think.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Do we want to do predictions now, or do we want to do awards, and then if we have time, do predictions?
Let's do awards.
All right. I agree. So these are mid-season awards. We sent these out early, and we have a list of ones, and these are ones that, we're just going to kind of list our favorites for these and try to come to a consensus on what these are. And guys, so maybe let's start from the bottom of the list if you can, just because.
Okay.
We'll work our way up to MVP maybe, or you know what? Screw it. Let's just start at the top. We'll do MVP first.
Let's do the weaker of the category first, and then the better of the ones.
Yeah,
All right,
we'll go MVP first.
MVP.
So I have 2 on my list, and I wasn't real sure.
Wait,
which one.
hold on a second. So just quick ground rules here. The category, you list your nominee, you give a quick reason why, and then we move on and we come to a consensus on one. Can we do it that way?
Sure.
All right. Sorry to interrupt.
So can we nominate more than one? Is that all right?
Yeah, okay.
All right. I'm going
No,
to
actually, each one should nominate one. Nominate your best, and then we'll argue it from there. In the interest of time.
I've got Peyton Manning and Jamal Charles. I'm nominating 2 because it's my podcast. So I've got Peyton Manning and Jamal Charles as my MVPs so far.
Pretty clear reasons why. My MVP is Noshawn Moreno.
I'm going to put Jimmy Graham up there. I have Peyton Manning, Noshawn, Jimmy Graham, but I'll nominate Jimmy Graham.
Jimmy Graham's a good one. Why Noshawn?
So Noshawn is a guy that went undrafted in our league, got picked up on the waivers for week 2, and then is in the top. I think, if I'm not mistaken, he's the number 4 running back right now in the league. I mean, for that kind of money spent to get that kind of production, most valuable player.
Who's the number 1 running back in the league?
It's Jamal Charles.
And how much did he cost?
Yeah, but I mean, this was a dynasty keeper league. Nick made a super savvy pickup, and quite frankly, got a little bit lucky that no one else outbid him for $2.
So you take into account how they got them and how much they cost.
Yes.
Yeah, well, yeah, why not?
Okay.
It's a free for all.
I did the same thing. I kind of did the same thing.
For MVP, I did not do that. I just figured it's the most valuable player in the league and the guy you'd want on your roster the most.
All right, Peyton Manning then.
I mean, can we? Yeah. Do we? I mean, I got to go Peyton Manning. I mean, he's been carrying any fantasy team he's been on this year.
I'm Peyton Manning. Anthony, do you have a problem with Peyton Manning being the MVP?
Nope. Okay, I'm for it.
All right. All good nominees though. LVP, which is your least valuable player, the guy who is just not working out at all. And for me, I've got C.J. Spiller and Tom Brady as my LVPs.
Ooh.
I'm gonna go Roddy White.
I have Roddy White on mine. I also have Chris Johnson and Danny Amendola. I'm going to go Chris Johnson just because of my hatred for Chris Johnson. But I think I like yours with Tom Brady. I think Tom Brady is it. That's my vote.
So let me state my case about Roddy White. Roddy
Sure.
White's a guy that you can't start, you can't trade, and you can't drop. And therefore, he's the least valuable player. I can't drop him because he has way too much upside.
I
can't
disagree,
tra-
Anthony.
I
I think you
can't
can trade Roddy White.
I don't think that anyone really wants him, and right now you can't start him because he's injured. So I don't know what to do with him, and therefore he's worth nothing to me.
You
I
could
think
say
it's
the same for Spiller, though, pretty much, right?
You can start Spiller and Brady and be okay with it. They're not going to get the production that you want out of them, but you'll still get points.
I guess. Yeah, Spiller's had more than 7 points twice this year. Yeah. I'm good with Roddy.
All right.
Nick?
Yeah, that's fine. All right, Roddy, I got you. Case made. He was on my list too, so that's fine.
Okay.
All right. Best draft pick. And this is, I went back and I looked at the the draft this year and was just seeing like, and this is value mainly. Like this isn't just like
I think
who
we're all
picked the
gonna
best
say one.
player. So I've got 4. So I couldn't
have
narrow it
2.
down. I've got Justin Blackmon at $3, Fred Jackson at $3, Danny Woodhead at 1, and Phillip Rivers at 3.
So a little story about Fred Jackson is that Andy was trying to bid up on Fred Jackson, but he thought that Fred Davis was Fred Jackson, and therefore he totally screwed that one up. So Fred Jackson,
wrong Fred.
Yeah, wrong Fred. Mine is Le'Veon Bell, and that's pretty much a hands down.
No, because I think Le'Veon Bell was a
Now
pretty
why?
few.
Why Le'Veon Bell? He's played 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be pretty solid, and I think that he's going to be a keeper for years to come.
Why is he the worst pick?
No, this is
best.
Oh. Yeah, I guess that makes more sense. Go ahead. Your case.
You know, like Fred Jackson at 3 is great, but he's 32 years old. You know, how many more years does he have left?
Well, I mean, I guess I was mainly.
Top 5 running back. Top 10 running back, and you're putting up beast points like he is. Fred Jackson at $3 is the best pick.
So Le'Veon Bell's had 57 yards and 34 yards in his 2 games. He's got 2 touchdowns in the first game, but it was against Minnesota, and they were both goal line carries. Like, I don't think he's been that great, and I don't think there's a lot to indicate that he's gonna bring that Pittsburgh running game back.
I've got a gut feeling.
All right.
I'm willing to change it, but that's just what I think.
Okay.
I say Fred Jackson, top 10 running back, who's clearly the number 1 running back on this team for $3 is money.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'll go with that.
and part of it is like midseason rewards for me is like up to this point. I'm not really talking too much about future. This is like so far this season.
Yeah, what are we doing for me this year?
That's fine.
Worst draft pick. I had like 10 here, but I'll give my first 3.
This is an easy one, by the way.
I think so.
Garrett Hartley at 20, Tom Brady at 36, and Rashard Mendenhall at 27. Those are my top 3.
Well, the clear answer, and I think the clear answer is Tom Brady, but also in the running are Ryan Matthews and Mendenhall.
Really? Because I think Zach Sudfeld for 9 should really be up there.
Yeah,
that's true. That was bad.
It's only $9 though, so that one's tough to argue over the more expensive ones.
All right. Well then, Tom
It's
Brady.
definitely Brady.
Yeah, although a kicker for $20 is pretty horrible.
This is why I'm going to argue against the kind of pick for Brady, is because he at least had a history to back to justify his cost, and it hasn't panned out for him. But you were still paying for the name of Tom Brady, and there was nothing coming out of the preseason that would justify you thinking that he's not worth $36.
Well, part of this decision making goes for like Watson's position in which he drafted Brady when he used all of his money for it. I mean, Brady at 35.
If I had drafted Brady for $36, would it have been the worst pick?
No, but because it was Watson, it was.
Well, not only that. I mean, you look at what Brady's provided.
We're talking about mid-season performances. So it doesn't matter who drafted him. If I spent $36 on Brady, is that the least valuable pick?
It could. No. I think it would be. I do because what has he done? I mean, he's been a below-average quarterback, and you paid elite quarterback money for him. I think he's been a bad pick. Okay. Just look at the numbers straight up. I think he's been bad. Yeah, I'll go with Brady based on I don't care who picked him, when he picked him, or what his preseason numbers look like. He was an expensive quarterback, which is a position you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of money on, and he hasn't provided the numbers that you were expecting to get.
Okay.
So I think we all agree on.
You haven't swayed my argument, but noted. And okay, we'll move on.
So who would you say, Nick?
I think Zach Sudfeld for $9 is bad.
Okay. Best trade is our next category here. And I'll start. I had actually, you know what, Anthony, you start. We'll switch it up here.
I like Merrill obtaining Alfred Morris at the expense of Julius Thomas, and that also coincidentally is the worst trade for Hillers, in my opinion.
Okay. Nick?
The best trade was acquiring Matthew Stafford for Daryl Richardson.
Okay.
So
that's a good one.
You getting Matthew Stafford for Daryl Richardson was the best trade.
I'm going to say Watson. Well, we got 3 different ones here. I'm going to say Watson trading Reggie Bush and Alshon Jeffrey for Jordy Nelson, Torrey Smith, and Shane Vereen.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
I think that preseason, I mean, when you talk about what he needed at the time, what he needed to do, and it's panned out. I mean, he got two top 20 receivers, and Vereen got hurt, but when he comes back, every indication is he's going to be a key part to that offense. So while Hiller's on the other side of it, ended up dropping Alshon Jeffrey, and Reggie Bush was a little dinged up. Bush has been great, but when he considers what he gave up.
Well, it's not so much what Hillers gave up, but it's what Watson gained from.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Hillers wouldn't, the delta in points wouldn't be that different because he's still always starting Brandon Marshall. But the fact that Watson went from starting nobody to those two guys every week, yeah, it makes a big difference. So I'm going to change my vote to yours, Merrill. I think that's a good one.
All right, Merrill, done.
Done.
Bet.
Worst trade. Anthony, you said it was
it's
Hillers.
Hillers giving away a solid RB2 at keeper value for a flash in the pan tight end.
Nick?
I think you and I agree on this one, Merrill. Giving up Demaryius Thomas for Andrew Luck.
No, I'm not going to agree. I'm going to say Andy giving up Matt Stafford for Darrell Richardson.
Okay.
And I guess my point is, my argument would be when he made that trade, he also got Steven Jackson, and his goal was to kind of deal one of those guys for another quarterback, and he unfortunately wasn't able to get that done. So right now he's basically traded Matt Stafford for nobody.
But I'm going to say that he acquired Jay Cutler in the deal.
No, he didn't.
No, he didn't.
There's only 7
No, he didn't.
separating them on the season. So
he drafted
He
Cutler.
didn't. Cutler was in the draft. He didn't acquire Jay Cutler as part of that deal.
No, but he
Anthony-
drafted Jay Cutler for cheaper than what Stafford was, and it's only 1 point per game separating the two.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he
see,
hasn't been starting Cutler each week either.
It doesn't matter.
But it does, because if he had Stafford, he would have started Stafford every week.
So let me defend Andy here for a second. Is that Andy took a gamble on a $7 starting running back, and the thing is, it didn't pan out for him. But when you're not psyched about Stafford anyway, and by the way, Stafford at $16 is a keeper, but at 19, is he really? And that's probably debatable. So yeah, so a 1-year quarterback out of Stafford versus a chance to have Darrell Richardson, who is a young $7 running back for years to come. I don't fault Andy too much for that. Yeah, the Steven Jackson thing, I mean, who knows? But it actually worked out better for Andy, because if he would have moved LaShawn McCoy and kept Steven Jackson, he would have a bum RB1 and no McCoy.
Yeah, but he didn't. I mean, none of that actually happened.
We're arguing about what the trade was, not what they did with it.
All right. Well, I'm kind of going down a couple of different scenarios here.
Nick, what was yours?
Mine was Demaryius Thomas for Andrew Luck, and that's because the point production that he gains by getting Andrew Luck doesn't nearly cover the point loss that he gets by now having to start Anquan Bolden instead of Demaryius Thomas.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that, but I don't think that's bad, because I think both teams made good moves there.
I think
I do agree that one team won it, but yeah, I don't have a problem voting for the Alfred Morris one, Anthony. I think that's fine. I would prefer, if I had to vote for one of yours, I would choose yours, Anthony, I guess.
All right. Well, whatever.
So I don't know that we can come to consensus on all these,
No,
but best move overall.
What does that mean?
So this could be a trade, this could be a pickup, or this could be a drop. This could be whatever. I mean, just the best move that somebody's made overall this year.
All right. Well, that's definitely Nick picking up Moreno.
That is actually one of mine. So now that you said that, I'm going to say Evan keeping Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning.
Ooh, yeah,
Okay.
That's pretty good too.
So I'm going to go selfish here, and I'm going to say me picking up Julius Thomas right before week 1.
I have it on there too.
Turning him around for basically Alfred Morris, which means I pretty much got Alfred Morris off waivers.
I'm pretty sure you beat me in the tiebreaker for Julius Thomas, by the way.
I think I played 2. I don't know, whatever. I mean, regardless, I got him.
Yep.
So, all right. Do we want to? Okay. Yeah. What was yours, Nick? I forgot already.
Keeping Andrew Luck and Peyton Manning.
Yeah.
It's something that
turned
we
out to
were
work
kind of
out, too.
criticizing him about, like, oh, well, he's going to make a move, and then he didn't, and then he waited until week 6 to move him, and he traded Andrew Luck for Demaryius Thomas. Like,
But what that also did for him is, I mean, not that it mattered because he still won, is he started Andrew Luck week 1 and missed out on 62 points from Peyton Manning in a doubleheader week. So the issue with that would be he kept a lot of value that he didn't really use the first 5 weeks or whatever.
okay.
But I don't know. Okay, best worst move, I guess. Nick, we'll start with you on this one.
Okay.
I mean, it could be one you've already said too. I mean, it's
No, I tried to do 3 different ones. Is what it is, or at least if I did one, then I would take the other side of that trade.
Okay.
But I have 3 here. I have
Alright.
my free agency quarterback carousel. I have trading Alfred Morris and trading for MJD. I think trading Morris is mine.
Okay.
I'm gonna say trading Alfred Morris by Hillers.
I'm gonna go back to the Stafford for. I feel bad because I keep clubbing Andy over the head with that trade, but I'm gonna go with trading Stafford for Darrell Richardson.
Mine is picking up Julian Edelman in week 2 for $32 of free agent money.
That could be bad.
What are you doing? It's week 2.
Yeah.
It's not even a doubleheader week.
It worked out for that week though, didn't he win?
No, he didn't.
Hmm.
I beat him that week anyway.
No. Well. What are you gonna do? I could see that. I didn't even think of that. That's a bad one too. That's a lot of money. Did we want to do best pickup? You said best fab, Anthony.
Oh wait. Actually, by the way, second to that is Hillers picking up. Who's that guy that Hillers picked up for 19? Chris Rainey.
Well, and that's why did we want to do best fab and worst fab? Like
we could just
best
pile on Hillers here if you want.
Yeah, because I had that as my worst fab pickup. It was
That's
Bobby
terrible.
Rainey for $19, who he dropped like 5 days later. He just basically said, "Here's some fab I want to donate," and he just dumped it.
Hey, and by the way, that's actually really hurting Hillers now because Hillers has got like $28 left, and he needs some guys desperately, and he's wishing he had Bobby Rainey still on his roster now. I think.
Maybe. Nick, is there like a best or worst pickup of the year that you like?
Well, I mean, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I definitely like my Noshawn Moreno pickup so far.
Yeah.
I don't.
That's
Honestly,
fair.
I wasn't ready for a worst free agency pickup. Since
Okay.
that $32 Julian Edelman, that seems right, but I think that I kind of understand why he did it, and that's why I'm not going to fault him for it. I've defended Watson a lot of Watson's moves this year. I think that Watson's done a lot better with his team.
Well, and we can get into that too, maybe with our last category. We'll start with worst owner. But worst owner so far this season. Who do you have, Nick?
I have Hillers.
Wow, really?
I do, because I think that it's just he makes so many. It's what it is, just to throw shit against the wall and see what sticks. And I really think that everything that happened to him this past week, based on all the moves that he's made prior to this year, based on what happened to him this week with all the injuries, and then trading away Alfred Morris, that his team is in shambles right now, and it's because of all the bad decisions that he's made leading up until this point.
Okay. I'm gonna say myself for my record's the worst, which is part of it, but some of that's luck. But the other thing is, like, each week I went back and looked, and I've been starting the wrong players every week. If I would have started the right players every week, I would be 5-3 right now instead of 1-7.
We're not playing that game though. You're playing based on the knowledge that you had at game time.
Yeah, but I mean, starting Hoyer over Wilson. I mean, there were.
That was a smart move.
Yeah. Well. Anyway, that's my pick.
So for me, I think Hillers has made the most statistical, or at least the most countable, quantifiable blunders. But like Nick said, Hillers just throws it all out there and see what happens, and some work, some don't. This year, it's been on the some don't side for Hillers, compounded with injury. But I think that the more egregious error in this league in general is sort of lack of activity. And this year, I think it might be Pritchard.
Okay. How much fab does he have left? Do we know? I mean, what's the?
I think he has the most left right now.
I look it up real quick.
He has.
I mean, he hasn't made any trades. He hasn't made any big pickups for the season.
Hey,
Pritchard,
Anthony will trade you Alshon Jeffrey for Calvin Johnson.
I will if I would do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
Well, Roddy White.
Teams will.
He has $62 left.
Teams will do well when they're active in the free agent market, and that's why TDJ has been known to stagnate in years past, because he doesn't sort of adjust with the way the season goes. And this is.
He's been a pretty successful owner, though. I mean, he's had maybe last year he wasn't that great, but I can understand that inactivity is an issue. Yeah. He's probably been the most inactive owner. It hasn't
been terrible. He hasn't done anything totally stupid. It's just that I like to see activity. I haven't seen all that much out of Pritchard yet. I'm not saying I did literally just say he's the worst owner, but I don't actually think he's the worst owner. You know what I
think he's
mean?
a bad owner, but so far this year he hasn't done anything.
If I had to choose somebody, it would be him.
Okay. Based on how his team's performed and the moves he's made, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Worst. Okay, so those are our worst. So we got all three of those. So Hillers, me, and Pritchard. Okay. Best owner. Nick, we'll start with you on this one.
You know what? Just because I've been doing it all year long, I'm gonna say Watson.
Okay.
Just because he's turned his team, or he's been the punchline of the jokes for so long in our league, that he's finally kind of turned our team around. And he's had a bad team, and he's had a lot of stuff happen to him this year on his team, and he's been able to turn it around. He's been active. He's buying people on the free agency market. He's trying to turn his team around, and it kind of shows. So kudos to you, Watson. You're earning your victories.
I'll second Watson's, the attaboy for Watson in the activity, though I do think that he's sort of backed into a couple of good moves. Like people offered him trades that he took that happened to pan out for him. But that's sometimes you got to do that to win in this league.
Yeah,
but
some people are afraid to pull the trigger on trades, And
Yeah, but I give the best owners to all three of the new guys, because it's not easy coming into our league, with all the rules that we have and the squabbling and this and that. All three.
Does everybody win, Anthony? Is that the deal? It's a tie.
I'll pick one. If you want me to pick one, I'll pick one. But all three have done a really good job with really bad teams. Probably the most standout. I think, despite his recent troubles, is probably JD, and close second is Dad Dix there with Danny Grimes.
Way to make us look bad, Anthony.
Okay. Wow, that's like the mom pick.
Shut up.
I'm gonna go with Watson. I'm gonna agree with you, Nick, on Watson. I mean, he's everything, and part of it is because the moves he's made have panned out. Like the Edelman. I mean, the Edelman pickup was bad, but at the time, like, he needed a startable receiver, and he overpaid.
$32.
Yeah, he overpaid, but he made sure he got it. I mean, he picked up Jacobs, and Jacobs looks like he might be a solid pickup, at this point. He picked up Andre Ellington. He made that preseason trade with Hillers, which I think was maybe the best trade of the year, which I do think is the best trade of the year. So he's put together a lot of moves where, I feel like he's been more active this year than he typically has been too. So, it started a little rough for Watson, but maybe because the moves he's making are working out. But I'm going to say him as well.
Okay.
Do we want to do a preview, or do we want to just call this?
Well, I think we should just call it. It's been an hour and a half.
Yeah.
It's a doubleheader week. It sucks for everybody. This is going to be a week where I'm not going to sleep well starting tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Kiana, your new apartment's going to be really clean on Sunday.
Yes. Your vacuum's going to be sparkly. Yeah.
Yeah. It could turn out that way.
This is like the pivotal week every year. It's like. Although sometimes everybody goes 1-1 and nothing really changes, but
I hope that's the case.
I bet you do. This is going to be crazy this week. I mean, a lot could change. I mean, the difference, you go from 3-5 to 5-5 and beat somebody, who goes 5-3 to 5-5, and boom, you've made up 2 games in 1 week. Huge. That's how the math works, by the way, guys. In case you were.
Yeah, that's difficult to understand.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So.
I look forward to Hiller's mid-year manifesto. This week. So
that was promised, wasn't it? Or in preseason, he said he would do that.
Yeah. So you wait till after this week to do it.
So that's a real treat. It's a trick or a treat, but mostly a treat.
I mean, it's not like he's doing anything, All right. Well, Nick, thanks for joining us, man.
We're a little burned.
I appreciate you subbing in last minute.
No problem.
And your preparation. And Anthony, as always, enjoyed it. And Merrill, as always, enjoyed it. Thanks, Mike. So for Anthony and Nick and Hillers, who's a little under the weather, we will talk to you guys later.
Totally.